Howdy, and welcome back to your Flick Classroom. Today we're going to be talking about populations and how they change over time. At the end of this, you need to understand how populations grow, understand what carrying capacity is and how that will affect our organisms, and of course, understand the 5 types of microevolution. Make sure you're taking good notes, and when you're done, use the notes and this video to complete your knowledge check. So first thing, let's talk about populations themselves. Well, what is a population? Population is a localized group of individuals belonging to the same species. So I could say that the population of the humans at Lowry, and that would mean every single one of you guys that are students, as well as all the teachers and administrators and paraprofessionals in the building. Or I could say the population of the city of Allen, and that would be all the people that live in Allen. I could say the population of Texas, humans in Texas. Or I could say a population of dogs in Texas. So you pick a species and you pick a location, and then that would be your population. So the thing about a species, it's a group, a species is a group of populations whose individuals have the ability to breed and produce offspring that are viable. That means that they can have their own offspring. So if 2 dogs came together and had a litter of puppies, those puppies could then go breed with other dogs. They could not breed with cats. They're different species. So if you can breed together and create viable offspring, that means things that can have more kids, then you are a species. Now, let's talk about a gene pool. So when we talk about gene pool, we're talking about all the different genes in a population. Whereas I have genes inside my body to give me blue eyes, there are also genes in the same population, all the humans here in Texas, who have green eyes or brown eyes. So those are different alleles within our gene pool. Now let's talk about populations and how they grow. Well, first of all, there's this guy, his name was Thomas Malthus, and he said basically that babies are born faster than people die. So if we have more babies being born than people that are dying, our population is going to grow and grow and grow. And it can grow unchecked, and that's what you see happening in this graph here. Our population would just keep growing and growing and growing. Sooner or later, though, there's going to be insufficient, that means not enough, space, water, shelter, and food for everyone, which means that our population would then crash back down, and it would go up and down around an area where it had enough resources for our population. Now, one of the things that limits our population is war, famine, and disease, because we're always finding new ways to make more food, more shelter, and things like that. So one of the things that hurts our population, that drops our population down, is war. And what do we go to war over? Well, space. I want that land, you want that land, we fight. Water. I want water, you want water. One of us is going to live. Shelter. I want that house, you want that house. Now sometimes when we talk about this, it could be things like famine. Okay, this huge thing came out and wiped out all the stuff that we were eating. Okay, diseases. We get sick. You get too many people together in one area, they get sick, and they start spreading it, and they start dying off. So a lot of different things that can limit growth of a population. So population density is the number of organisms in that particular location, the number of organisms in a particular location. There's different factors that can adjust that. The number of births, right, that would increase our population. The number of deaths, that would decrease it. The number of immigrations, that's people coming to the area, that would increase. And the number of emigrations, that's people leaving. So these things will change the amount of organisms in the area. So a population is going to increase or decrease depending on how many people are added or removed. When I was talking about those things that could limit us, that food, that shelter, that space, things like that, what I'm really talking about is a carrying capacity. So our environment can only carry or handle so many organisms of that species, because after that there's not enough food or water or shelter or space. Again, that's carrying capacity. So we see that on a graph that looks like this, and this is what most populations look like. Over time, the number of individuals will grow and grow and grow until we hit the limit, the K value, or carrying capacity, for what we can handle. There's no longer, at this point, we don't have enough food, or we don't have enough space. Now, the particular thing that keeps our population at this size and doesn't let our population grow is called a limiting factor. It limits the number of organisms you can have. So if there wasn't enough food, food would be our carrying capacity, our limiting factor, and that would stop our population from growing. But if we got more food, this line could go up until it found something else that would limit it. Maybe there's not enough shelter, not enough places for us to live, so that would be our limiting factor. Let's talk about the 5 types of microevolution. So before we get really into those, we're going to talk about how people kind of thought things evolved. There was this guy named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, and what he thought was that by using a body part or not using a body part, that would determine whether or not you would pass that off to your offspring. So basically, I have one hand, which means that obviously I either didn't use my hand, so it went away, or maybe my parents didn't use their hands, and so I was born without it. That doesn't even make sense, okay? He's basically saying that giraffes have long necks because their ancestors wanted the leaves at the top of the tree, so they stretched, and their neck got longer and longer, and so they had kids with longer necks. Doesn't work like that. I know a lot of people think that if I'm really strong, my kids will be strong. No, you're strong because you work out. When you have a kid that's born, they're very weak. They have to work out to get stronger. So these are acquired characteristics, whereas things like your skin tone and your eye color and the shape of everything, those are inherited characteristics. We all talk about Charles Darwin. I've got 2 pictures of him here, a younger picture and an older picture. And he's the guy that wrote Origin of Species. A lot of people just stop there. They say that's the title. The full title is Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So we're saying that species were not created in their present form. They didn't just pop out and here they are, but they evolved from those common species that we talked about and how that works in our previous video. So he proposed that the way this worked was through natural selection. He said that you would have a slight modification that would make you better, and so you would pass on that trait to your kids, and they would have that trait, and it would make them live better, so they would have more kids, and they would pass it on to their kids. So we're saying that over time we've had slight, small modifications here and there that have created all the diverse life on the planet. So this idea of common descent. We all started at this primordial ooze, and we had a little thing that changed, and a little thing that changed, and so on and so forth, until we got to where we are now. So let's get into those 5 types of microevolution. Number 1 is genetic drift. So genetic drift just states that it's a change in the gene pool of a small population due to chance. So there's 2 kind of ways to look at genetic drift. Again, it's chance, just so happens that it worked out this way. And there's bottlenecking and there's founder. And I want to go into both of those a little bit deeper. So bottlenecking works kind of like this. Imagine that you have a bottle and it's filled with yellow and red and blue beads. And all the blue beads are on the top, and there's more of them than there are of any of the other beads. If I take that bottle and I shake it up and I tip it over and I pour them out and I only get red and yellow beads, okay, we're saying there was some sort of bottleneck that stopped all these different beads from coming out, and all we got were just red and yellow. We went from a population inside the bottle of red, yellow, and blue to a population now that's just red and yellow. All the blues are gone. What we're saying here through the bottleneck effect is that some sort of disaster happened that reduced the population. So we don't have all the beads that were inside the bottle. Now we only have a few, and none of the blue ones made it out. So we will continue with a population that now has yellow and red, but the blue ones are gone for good. Things that might cause this are like earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, things like that. Things that wipe out huge populations. The founder effect. So genetic drift also has another part called founder effect, and that's where we colonize a new location. Now, it results in a random change in the gene pool, or what looks random. So we have the mainland of South America, or something like that, and we have this huge population, all these different types, and then they leave and they start a new population. But the only ones that left and crossed over to the new area were the blue ones. So that whole new area, that whole new population over here is all going to be blue. Now let's talk about gene flow. This is the next one. So we just talked about genetic drift. Now we're going to talk about gene flow. This is the gain or loss of alleles from a population through the movement of individuals, okay? Immigration and emigration. People come in, so we might have some purple beads that show up in our population. And they're like, hey, cool guys, we're all here now. And they all start mingling. But maybe some of them decide to leave. So the red ones are like, nah, we don't like it here anymore. It's too crowded. And they left. So now our population has changed due to the flow of genes. We've brought new genes in, and we've taken some of the old ones out. It could go either way. Mutation. So let's talk about mutation. So we have Mama and Daddy Bee here, and they're going to have some kids. Two of their kids were blue like them, but one of them had a mutation that made them a little bit darker. Well, as the population keeps going on, so these guys find mates, and those mates, they have some kids. So this dark blue ends up being a dominant trait. This mutation is dominant. And so these guys start flooding into the population. And so over time, we're going to see the population start to become more and more dark due to mutation. Non-random mating. This is kind of like artificial selection. This is where nature isn't taking over. It's not chance. It's very planned. And artificial selection is kind of how we have all the different dogs that we have now. We got the different breeds of dogs by saying, look, I want a dog with big heads. So they went and they got dogs, all the dogs they could find with the big heads, and they bred them together. And those dogs that had big heads, and some had small heads. And they took the small-headed ones and they got rid of them, and they said, all right, we're just going to breed these big-head dogs now. So they get those dogs and they have babies, and every time a small-headed dog popped out, they got rid of it until they got all these dogs that were just making big head dogs, okay? So artificial selection is that whole idea of non-random mating, and humans do it all the time, not just to animals, but to plants as well. We want this plant because it has it resists different bugs, and so they can't eat it, and we're going to try and put it together with this one, and we're going to get more and more that are resistant to the bugs, and we're going to put that into our food, and that's what we want. Okay, so we're selecting for some sort of trait that we like, and we want to keep going, and we make sure that it has more offspring than anything else. So natural selection, all right? There are three different types of selections, and the first one is the stabilizing. So if you imagine that this gray one right here is the original population of a flower, and they range in size from real small flowers to real tall, large flowers. But the problem with being small is you're hidden in the shadow. So these guys don't do so well, they die off. And being really big, you're so big that the wind grabs you and shreds you to pieces. So we're stabilizing our selection and choosing the center, the medium-sized individual. So these guys, the population, we have more and more individuals who are medium-sized and not as many that are short and not as many that are long, because we have killed off the short ones and killed off the big ones through either shade killing them off, they didn't get enough sunlight, or wind tearing apart the big ones. So that's stabilizing. We've kind of stabilized it. We've brought the sides in a little bit, and we're selecting for the medium one. Directional selection. Directional selection means that we're going from one side to another. So again, we have our original population where we had some small-necked giraffes, and we had some long-necked giraffes, and we had some guys in the middle. Well, the small ones weren't able to reach the food, and the mediums were a little bit, and the long-necked ones were able to a lot better get to that food way up there. And unfortunately, these small-necked giraffes died off because they couldn't reach it all. And the medium-necked ones, they do okay, but only okay. Whereas these guys with the longer neck do a lot better. So we've selected to one direction. We're moving away from the normal and moving closer and closer to the larger size of my giraffe. And the last one is disruptive. And disruptive is where we're going to select the two extremes and get rid of the medium. So with this one, we might have, I don't know, 3 different sizes of flowers. And we had bees that we had for every single one of these flowers, right? And these guys, this one type of bee went to small flowers, this one type of bee went to medium flowers, and this one type of bee went to the large flowers. But for some reason, we wipe out that one bee in the middle that liked the medium-sized flowers. And because we wiped him out, these medium-sized flowers, well, there's nothing to help them breed anymore, and they die off. So only the small ones and only the large ones continue to survive. Now, guys, there's lots of different examples I could give for that, but those are the ones I... Here's a bibliography, ladies and gentlemen. Please use your notes and this video to take your knowledge check.